Hello, everyone. It is July 4th, 2018. And yes, I'm coming to you a little early. In fact, you can see in the background how much brighter everything is than usually when I do this at 9 p.m. Eastern when the sun has already gone down. What you can't see is on the other side of the computer is my window that looks out on 140th Avenue in Madeira Beach, Florida. It's beautiful out there right now, though it's kind of been sunny and rainy today. Who do we have today? Kelly and Barb, Christina, Angel, Emily. Good to see you, Emily. Pamela. As you could already know, obviously, if you're tuning in now, you know that I've altered the time of the playing of this live show today because it is July 4th, and I realize a lot of you are going to be watching fireworks later. In fact, I have to tell you, I was thinking that, doing the show at 9 o'clock tonight, they do fireworks here in Madeira Beach. It probably would have heard booms in the background and everything else while I was doing the show, and I'm thinking this is just – so it was either of doing it earlier or not doing it at all, and I figured I'll see what the listeners have to say, and you convinced me to just do this program earlier, so that's what I'm doing. Who else do we have? Charlie, good to see you. Stacy, I have a question from you that I saw, so I'm going to get to that. I have a bunch of questions to answer, some about disappearances, true crime, and some about other things. So we're going to do that. But Angela, good to see you. So I'm just going to start talking. Yes, Kelly, I forgive you if you fall asleep. You already worked 8 hours and a half hours. Kelly, you just lay down and go to bed. No big deal at all. You can catch this later. This will be uploaded to YouTube, just like all of the other episodes are of the Unfound live show right after the show is over. I try to do that as quickly as possible, and I usually get that done within about an hour. Of course, it's available on Facebook right after as well. Hello, Ann. You're watching on the way to a cookout, Angela. Sounds good to me. I don't know what I'm going to be doing after the show's over. I have no plans at all. Maybe go back to work like I've been doing all day. But you should also know that Sinead is being – see, this is what happens when you get to when the show happens a little earlier. Sinead, who is from Ireland, is tuning in live for the first time, and I'm going to say, oh, wow, Sinead, right? But it's good to see you, Sinead. Very pleased you make time for Unfound. Of course, it's not a special holiday over there in Ireland, of course. Emily, the other Emily, happy 4th to you as well. You should know next week I am going to be coming to you from Pennsylvania. I am going to see my parents for a month, and the show will go back to its 9 p.m. Eastern time next week, but I will be coming to you from the spare bedroom that my parents have set up for me at their place in Pennsylvania. So I will be driving up there to see them. I'm not sure what day, what time and everything, but it takes about 17 hours to drive there. I'm actually looking forward to the drive. I love just getting in the car, me and my thoughts and the music and all, just some solitary time, But so next week I'll be coming to you from Pennsylvania. I'll be coming to you from Pennsylvania until the middle of August, and I'm really looking forward to seeing my parents. I think the big deal, though, is that I'm really going to have to spend some quality time with them. When I saw them in South Carolina, I was working very hard. That was the week the Thomas Brown case came out, and we already know what is going on with that. That's been a big case for, I think, the case and for Unfound and the people involved in that. And that was a very busy week for me. Did an interview, did a couple interviews that week, and kind of the time that was cut out for seeing my parents actually got caught up with Unfound stuff. So when I go to see my parents for the month, I'm going to have to rearrange my priorities a little bit. So I'm just telling you that right now. Yes, Stacy, long drive to Pennsylvania, but when I do it, I drive like in the middle of the night and there's no cars on the road. So it's really an easy drive. It's not difficult at all. And I lived out west for a long time, and you had to drive a long way to get anywhere. So it's no big deal. You should know also about next week. I'm pretty sure, not 100% sure, but pretty sure that next Friday's episode is going to be an update episode. Many of you have asked me to do this. I get a lot of questions. Well, what happened in that case after Unfound covered it? I'm going to do that episode, I believe, next Friday. That's what I'm planning to do. Jamie, you asked me about Tom's case. I'm going to be doing as much as I can on Tom's case for this episode here in a little bit, so just hang on. Hello, Lori. How are you? I'm going to cover. I'm going to be able to talk about at least 37 cases where things have gone on after Unfound has covered it. So that's over 1/3. I'm not saying that Unfound had something to do in all of the cases. You know what happened after, but in a lot of them, yes. The answer is yes. So, of course, given that there's 37, there's going to be many cases that I'm not going to be able to talk about. Why? Either there hasn't been any change in that case since Unfound covered it, or there are things off the record that I can't talk about. All right, so I'm not going to go on the record with things that I believe at this point are secret. So, but I'll still have 30-some cases to talk about. You can anticipate that being a long episode, but I'm just going to hit upon these cases as thoroughly but as quickly as I can, because once again, I've had people ask me about this. You know, what's going on in this case? What's going on in that case? And I think that this will be a good week to do it. And I'm actually going to start working on that episode tomorrow. And I actually hope to record it before I even drive to Pennsylvania. So there you go. Becca, happy 4th to you. Jill, I'm going to answer a question for you. Karen, good to see you as well. So next Friday is going to be a little bit, so when I say next Friday, I mean a week and 2 days from now. So that would be July 13th. Friday the 13th, by the way. It's going to be a little bit different type of show. Not going to be any interviews for it. Once again, that may change depending. But right now, that is the plan. So there won't be any interviews for that episode. It'll just be me talking about a lot of the cases that Unfound has covered. And I think this will be, especially we have a lot of new people listening to the program. A lot of new people, you know, really because of maybe the Thomas Brown case, a lot of new people coming to the program for the first time. And this will be probably a good introductory episode to those people who haven't had an opportunity to go back to the beginning, to Suzanne Lau, Jason Jolkowski, Jesse Foster, when the program first started out. It'll be a good way to introduce these new people to the program. Bobby, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Going to be driving through your state next week. All right. I hope I don't get any tickets. Barbara, good to see you. So that's what's going to be going on next Friday, July 13th. And really don't know what's going to happen after that. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see what work gets done, what interviews that I do. And I have a lot of interesting cases that I'm working on right now. But next Friday, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a little, like I said, a look back episode and giving you some updates. Because once again, so many people have asked me to do that. Janet, I guess your internet's back. Welcome. So the Thomas Brown case, got a lot to talk about. But first, I'm going to answer a question. I'm going to answer Alexis. I don't know if she's in here or not. She asked me if I have any pets. I do not have any pets. I have not had any pets since about 1995 that have been personally under my care. Now, I dog sit for my brother once in a while in Largo. You remember once in a while I've done this show from his house. But I do not have any pets. I love animals. Hello, Donna. How are you? Oh, you're trying to watch from your phone, Janet. Okay. And Rosemary, hello. I don't have any pets. A little too much work for me. I love pets, but and I don't mind taking care of my brother's dog Kobe for a week here and there and feeding him and things, but I don't like to be tied down like that. And maybe that's the reason I'm single at 47 years old. I'm going to be 48 August 1st. Love animals, love horses, cats, dogs. You find me an animal and I will try to get along with it. But to actually have to care for one and those things and prepare, well, if I'm going to go somewhere, who's going to watch the dog? That's not me. That's just not something. I love animals, though. When I lived in Pennsylvania at home with my parents, we had a dog. His name was Fred. He was a miniature wiener dog, and he was great. In fact, wiener dogs, especially miniature wiener dogs, dachshunds, are my favorite animals in the world, probably. Really. I could watch miniature dachshund or dachshund YouTube videos all day. That's the truth. But don't want to take care of them. Just, I can stand a week at a time with my brother dog, Kobe, but that's about it. I mean, I'm friendly. Like, I go play disc golf over in Orlando, and there's a horse farm next to one of the courses. There'll be horses there. I'll go over there and stand and talk to the horses for like 10, 15 minutes. I'll just make up conversations with them. That's true. That's true. In fact, I think there's a video on my private private Facebook account where I've done that. I'll just stand there, and they'll look at me, and I'll talk to them. But I really don't have the capacity to care for animals all the time. It's true, Derry. I see you laughing there, but it's true, Derry. It's true. I will stand there and just talk to there's like a donkey there, and the donkey's with these horses, and the donkey will be standing there looking at me, and I'll be looking at the donkey, and I'll be saying, don't take any crap from those horses. All right, don't take any crap from them. I know how they think they're all high and mighty and everything, but don't you take any crap. This is the way I talk to animals. It's kind of just the person that I am. I love them, but I don't want to take care of a donkey or a horse or anything like that. But I love them. So I hope that answers your question, Alexis. I don't know if you're watching or not, but you can catch this later, I guess, on YouTube. I'm going to answer one more question before we start talking about Thomas Brown's case and everything that's happened this week. I'm going to take a question from Stacy, being that I know. Let me see here. Hold on. Stacy, I know that you're in here. I just saw you. You wanted to know what kind of former jobs that I have. I'm going to try to give you all of the jobs that I've ever had, and I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But first, Donna says, hi, I'm doing pretty good here. Glad I can actually catch you live, usually working. Donkeys give as good as they get, do they? Donna, I wouldn't know, never had one, but the donkey just seems so lonely. He was the only donkey, and there were a bunch of horses, so I thought that I needed to give him a little pump up when I saw him that one time over in Orlando. Where is that? That's Turkey Lake Park where I play, and there's a horse farm there. And there's cows there too. And I have a really funny joke about the donkeys and the horses and the cows, but I'm not going to get into it here. My jobs that I've had, the first job that I've ever had was a church organist. I can play the piano, as you can see in the background. And I was raised Roman Catholic, I was an altar boy, and then I was a church organist from like 10th grade through me going to college, so like 3 years. And then I worked during the summers while I was in college for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation as a flag person for 3 summers. So I walked, holding the sign, stop, slow. I was one of those guys for 3 summers when I went to college. And then after that, I had my own business. I was interested in drag racing, so I had a drag racing business. And I still love cars. And then I worked for my family as a car salesman. My family was in the car business for over 60 years. They had a Ford, Lincoln, Mercury dealership, Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge. I worked for my uncle, and I worked with my cousins. My grandfather actually started the business, so I had that job. And then when I moved to Las Vegas, my first job was I worked for 7-Eleven, which was the worst job I've ever had as a field consultant. I did that from July 1998 through April 1999. Hated it, quit. Didn't even give them 2 weeks notice. Showed up on a Monday morning and quit. I had to be in my 20s. And then after that, I what I do after that? I worked as the office manager for a film festival in Las Vegas, which was really, really fun. And then I was a production assistant for movies and TV shows that were shooting in Las Vegas. And then I was a actor at Star Trek The Experience, also ride operator at Star Trek The Experience. And then I was a stage manager for a magic show and a Rat Pack show in Vegas. And I was also at the same time a tech for working on printers and fax machines. And then I developed an interest in podcasting, probably 2006, 2007, started doing this. I've been doing this over 10 years. And then since 2000, then I moved to Florida, and then I've been writing and doing podcasting ever since. So I'm a little jack of all trades in there. I've done some modeling, frankly, while I work for Star Trek. If they ever need any pictures taken from promotional materials, I was the guy they picked to do that. You can think of that what you want. Did some independent films. So I've done a lot of different stuff. A lot of different interests. And most of those things are working with teams, but also working by myself. So Stacy, there you go. Yeah, Stacy, that's what I've done. And I suppose it's easy to have all those different kind of jobs and kind of floating from one job to the other. When you're not married, I don't have any kids, so all I have to do is provide for myself. So I'm going to go where my interests take me, and while I'm there, I'm going to give it 100%. And I think I did that in every job that I've ever had, even though some of the jobs I didn't like so much. So, and so I'm doing this now. This is my job. I don't have any. This is what I do. I do this program. I, of course, have my books, got the shirts, and all the things that I've yet talked about. But there's your answer. Well, I am a jack of all trades. That is true. So the Thomas Brown case. If you don't know what is going on this week, I'm not there. I live in Florida. I've never been to Canadian Texas, but so I know pretty much what some of you know, have been following it, that the DA's office in Texas, they have investigators there. They're starting to follow up on some rumors and other things regarding the disappearance of Thomas Brown. The private investigator is there. He did a TV interview on Monday night, July 2nd. And then he also did a live radio interview yesterday morning, July 3rd, with the same guy that I did an interview with back when the Thomas Brown episode came out. The guy's name is Chris. I forget his last name. But the radio host is Chris, and they talked for about 20 minutes. I thought that both interviews were revealing. If you'll notice, and I posted what I could in the discussion group and on the Unfound page. So I, in the TV interview, and Unfound Podcast got partial credit because they used some of the surveillance video, and they asked me for it. The Amarillo TV station contacted me, asked me if I would send them the video. I did that. And I said, as long as I get credit, as long as the Unfound Podcast gets credit. And so when they showed those short clips, you could see the Unfound Podcast tag right there, which was really nice. And I appreciate them doing that. But the private investigator, who I've never talked to, never met him, just want to be clear, he was asked about suspects. He was pretty evasive on that question. And in fact, the reporter noted that in the interview on Monday night. So there's that. That's what I thought was revealing there. And also, Chris Samples. Thank you, Rebecca, for pointing his name out. Thank you that. Chris Samples from KX DG, or is it DJ? DG or DJ in Perryton, Texas. Okay, Chris Samples. Thank you, Rebecca. And Rosemary, can I please send you the James Walker podcast? I can do that, Rosemary, no problem. After we're done, I'll do that tonight. I won't forget. Thank you. James Walker and his son. If you don't know Rosemary, Bobby Walker is in the group right now watching. So then with the interview that the private investigator Phil Klein did on Tuesday morning, probably the biggest point I would say about that interview was that he also admitted that there were pictures of Thomas pumping gas that night that disappeared. All right. There may be multiple pictures, but in the interview that I did with Penny, we talked about one picture in particular. So he backed that up. And in fact, if you go back and listen to the interview with Penny, she states that both she and her private investigator, Phil Klein, who did that interview, both saw it. And then later, when they inquired about it, somehow it got back, and Sheriff Lewis says he has no idea what Penny is talking about, even though it was Sheriff Lewis who showed Penny the picture. So those videos are up. I'm very thankful. I forget his name, but he recorded it on his cell phone, the radio interview, and I posted that. He posted it, and then I reposted it. And then a couple different people posted the TV coverage from Monday night. So a lot of information there. I don't know how much of it is new, but you at least get to hear from people who are on the ground there in Canadian now doing this. They followed up on a rumor that Thomas might have been buried on a disc golf course in Canadian Texas. Of course, it's very coincidental. I'm a huge disc golf fan. So so they followed up on that. That ended up being nothing. That actually came from a ghost whisperer guy, and you know my feelings about those types of people. Psychics, palm readers, the rest of them, you know my personal things, but I realize that in their position, they have to follow up on these things. You know the way I feel about it, and I'm just going to leave it at that. That didn't turn out to be anything. And so they're going to continue working. I don't know, if you don't know that before Phil Klein went back to Canadian, he had asked if anybody wants to come forward with any information, he's going to be there. He would make himself available to these people. I have no idea if he's talked to anybody. Once again, I've never talked to him. I've not avoided it. It just hasn't happened. He's never tried to contact me from my knowledge. And he owes me nothing. I mean, absolutely, he doesn't have to tell me anything. He's doing his business, fine by me, and I'll continue to go about my business as well. So I don't know. And I will say this: some of you have asked me what I think of the private investigator. Okay, and some of you have sent me the article about this, how he got involved in this case in Idaho. I do not know the guy. Okay. If Penny trusts him, then that's good enough for me. Me personally, I am somewhat cynical of most private investigators who I don't know. I've gotten to know a couple. Caroline Lowe is now a private investigator. She wrote the foreword to Volume 4 book that just came out. I've had at least one, Amanda Guio's private investigator. I know him. I think he does a good job. In fact, I think he's going to be doing a TV show. His own TV show. I know him. Phil Klein, I don't know him, so I can't vouch for him either way. But if Penny likes him, if she thinks he's done a good job for her, then that's good enough for me. I don't know when it went on in Idaho with all of that. I just don't know. I don't know. Emma says, how odd listening to you on my iPad and then come on Facebook on my phone, and here you are, huge fan from the UK. Emma, I want you to know I caught that the soccer game yesterday, the penalty shootout or the shootout at the end. Very happy that England won. Not a huge soccer fan, but happy that England won. James, thank you very much for my efforts on the Con Brown case. Thank you, James. It's very kind. I'm not going to use your last name because then people would find out who you are. But James, thank you. Angel, he's working is Philip Klein working the Michael Chambers case as well? That may be so. I have no idea. So there's a lot going on, and there have been a lot. It continues to be the case that I get private emails, messages from people in Hemphill County or nearby who continue to have concerns about the case, about Sheriff Lewis and what went on that night. I will say again, as I did a couple weeks ago, I've not gotten one person, not one, who has emailed me in support of Sheriff Lewis or any of the deputies. Not, and I would tell you, I never lie to the listeners. I may have to withhold things because of privacy and confidentiality. But if I can tell you something, I'm going to do so, and I'm going to be honest with you. I've not gotten one email, message, nothing in support of Sheriff Lewis. So there you go. I have to say that the only thing that's probably saddened me a bit was that, and some of you pointed it out when you listened to the radio interview from yesterday morning, is that the host, Chris Sample, admitted that he hadn't even listened to the episode that I did with Penny. In listening to it, it saddened me a bit, but I think what happened, and I don't think he knew that I actually interviewed Penny for the episode. If you listen to him talking to Phil Klein yesterday, you get the distinct impression that he thought I just talked for 3.5 hours. Of course, that was not the case. So I sent him an email. He emailed me back, we're cool. But I think that maybe he now realizes he needs to listen to the episode, and then we can talk. And he invited me to come back on the program somewhere down the road. I want to do that. I'm going to do that if invited. So he and I were cool. I was just a little saddened that he hadn't listened to it, because I know that it's been a big thing. Penny, of course, worked very hard to do the 3-hour interview. I worked very hard on the episode, and that surely has raised the level of awareness for Thomas Brown's case. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I know how many people from Texas, northern Texas, have joined the private group since the episode came out, and it's quite a few. Okay, Charlie, Phil, okay. And there you go. So that's really all at this point I have to say about Thomas's case. I've talked to Penny. She does not owe to tell me anything that's going on. But if I find out anything and I think that I'm allowed to tell all of you, I will do that. But if she wants to keep me updated, that's up to her. She is under no obligation to do so. I hope she does. But I will continue to work for her in any capacity that she wants. That is the way I handle all of my guests. They are under no obligation to keep telling me things or anything else. I want them to, but they have no obligation to me. I want to continue to work and for them. And if they ask me to do something for them, if I can do it, I'm going to do it, even if I haven't heard from them in a year or a year and a half, being the podcast. If one of the guests that I had way back at the beginning, who I haven't talked to in a long time, just out of the blue says, "Hey, Ed, can you do this? Will you help me with this?" Absolutely, no questions asked. But they're under no obligation to stay in contact with me, even though I would love that. And that I do talk about some of the guests that I do keep in contact with quite often. For example, Joyce Rivituzzo. I talk to her at least once a month, if not more often. So just different guests, different situations. Tracy says, great podcast on Tom Brown case. I'm a small town panhandle Texas girl, and I can say small town shady law enforcement does not surprise me. Okay, Tracy, duly noted. So that's all I really have on the Thomas Brown case at this point. We'll see what happens. And like I said, I may be on the radio somewhere in the next month or couple months. I don't know. If Chris calls me or emails me or something, I told him I would clear my schedule and let's do it. Let's keep continuing to talk about it. I will say one more thing. Okay, here's another point that came up in the interview yesterday that he did with Philip Klein. Towards the end, and maybe even after the interview was over, he said, Chris says, I just can't see a situation where the sheriff and the Rangers and the FBI would all be involved in this conspiracy to cover up something regarding Thomas Brown's case. That is totally the improper way to think about it. And I think the reason that he does that is because I think, how do I put this? You just have to know more about missing persons cases. And I don't look at it that way. I do not believe that this is some grand conspiracy. Instead, I look at it this way. Imagine, instead if it was Thomas Brown, imagine if it was a woman, let's say a 33-year-old woman. Hello, Dorothy. How are you doing? Imagine if it's a 33-year-old woman driving a red Durango that night. She has to be somewhere by midnight at a friend's to pick up her kids. All the same thing. She's out with friends. She gets dropped off at a red Durango. She goes over to Frank's to get gas. She has to be somewhere at midnight to pick up her kids who maybe somebody's babysitting them or something. She doesn't show up. Everybody's concerned. Let's just say. And then weeks later, a video pops up. And it shows her ex-husband, shows his car just down the street. In fact, this ex-husband and her ex-husband and her had a tumultuous relationship. And in fact, maybe a year and let's say about 4 months before that, he had been driving along the street. She was walking with friends. He stopped his car. He grabbed her and pulled her into his car and yelled at her and things, and then she got away. Same exact facts as the Thomas Brown case in relation to Sheriff Lewis. Same exact facts. And so then, after she disappeared, weeks later, months later, this video pops up that her ex-husband, who just a year and 4 months before had kind of roughed her up or something, he was within a half mile and a minute of where she disappeared from. Now, we all know what we would think, even though there's no other proof. There's no blood evidence, no DNA, nothing else. We know what we would think. We would think, and then her, Durango was found the next morning. Same exact facts, just changing Thomas Brown from an 18-year-old male to a 33-year-old female mother. Changing Sheriff Lewis from a sheriff to a estranged ex-husband. We know what we would think. We would think that the ex-husband did something. What is the coincidence that the ex-husband would be so close to that woman on the night that she disappeared? We know what we'd think. Even though there would be no other information. But here's the important point, and I think this is where I'm going with what Chris Sample brought up in that interview, is that the Rangers and the FBI, if they were to get involved in this hypothetical, theoretical woman disappearing, they would treat this ex-husband the same way as anybody else. Without proof, they can't do anything. All right, they can't. No matter if it's the sheriff of a town, an ex-husband, anything else. So there doesn't have to be a conspiracy. I mean, you'd never think there was a conspiracy if it was an ex-husband who was a suspect and the Rangers and the FBI didn't do anything. So we can't automatically assume a conspiracy if the FBI and the Texas Rangers don't do anything to Sheriff Lewis. Why? Because really at this point, there's no proof. On the other hand, we know how these disappearances go. We know what we think in the case of like a Julie Early, where the husband just says, oh, she just left. We know what think in the case of Rosemary Rapp. Oops, she just left. This Friday, Ellen Sloan, William Golson. I don't know, she just left. We have our suspicions, but there's no proof. That's why these things are still unsolved. So there doesn't have to be a conspiracy for no one to be arrested. All the reason that is because you need proof. And it seems to me right at this point that, once again, I'm not there, but it seems to me I'm going to take for granted that, frankly, the Rangers and the FBI, if they're even still involved, whoever else, the Attorney General's office, they don't have enough information to not just put the handcuffs on Sheriff Lewis or any deputies, but anyone there right now. That's the way I look at it. I do not see this. Never think inaction by the police is the signs of a conspiracy. I find too many guests when I first talk to them, they automatically think, well, the cops aren't calling me back. The police don't want to take my phone calls. The suspect is right there. Why don't they do something? And they automatically think conspiracy. Whereas I have to tell them, well, if that's the case, then every department in the United States is corrupt, because that's what happens in all missing persons cases. So when I talk to my guests, that's what I try to bring to them. I try to bring to them an educated point of view about what's going on in missing persons cases all over the United States. And I have to tell you, when I tell them that, it makes them feel better. It gives them more confidence in the people invested in the case. Now, they may be incompetent, they may be lazy and everything else, but they're not involved in the conspiracy. There is no conspiracy. It's just an unsolved case, and there's no proof to do anything yet. So that's what I would tell Chris Samples, the host, is that Thomas Brown's case, just because of the unique facts of it, doesn't make it any different than any other case. If you have a suspect or you have somebody, you can't put the handcuffs on them, no matter who that person is, without proof. All right? That's how things work in the United States. Now, if we were in China, North Korea, things would be different. That's not the way we do things here. So, Charmin says, those closest to this person always looked at first. Jamie says, very true. Angela says, nice, a level head. Thank you. Okay. But see, my job, is to put facts out there. And I always say, what have I said many times? I can't help it if facts make certain people look guilty. That is not the intention. And in fact, even when I did my interview with Chris back then, and the video came up and I said I was deeply disturbed, my concern was, what did I say? I said my concern is that the guys investigating this case never stated that they were like 30 seconds away from Franks at the time Thomas Brown disappeared. That's what bothers me. It's perfectly logical for cops being cruising around their hometown, especially since Canadian Texas is where the main sheriff office is, makes total sense. But that they were right down the street from where Thomas disappeared and they never said anything, and I'm the one that had to discover that, that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me. So I've been going through this through my head, and I hope that makes sense to everybody. Because we can switch the facts around as far as who Thomas was and who Sheriff Lewis or whoever else was. It still comes down to proof. But it works both ways, is that police or whoever they are not above the law, but they're not below the law either. If you're going to charge any of them, you have proof. And my guess is they just don't have it yet, but that's what they're working on. Me, I will be happy to do my part in it. I'm a reporter. My job is to inform the public. If I get any factual information and I'm allowed to air it, that's what I do. And it was good in this case because I found that video information on my own, and I came forward with it. Okay. If somebody else would have discovered it, I don't know if I would have been allowed to air it. But being that I discovered it on my own, I think I fully have the right to let everyone know, especially the people in northern Texas, know about it. So that's my attitude. But I think you can see, you change the facts around, we know what we'd think if this was some sort of ex-husband, ex-wife situation. We know what we'd think. I'm going to take another question at this time. Erica, who asked me a few different questions, I'm going to just take this one. Have I considered a meetup? I have. I don't know if that's ever going to take place. Would it be one here in the Tampa area? I know that what other podcast hosts do. Okay. I know what they do. But I don't know. I don't. It's the same way when I'm asked them if I'm ever going to go to CrimeCon, probably not. because I see my job and what I do maybe a little differently than the way other podcast hosts view it. Love to meet listeners, love to meet guests, and I've done both. But a planned, meetup or something like that, I really just don't have time to think about it. I just be honest. My job is informing all of you about the disappearance cases in the United States that are unsolved. And I love interacting with you. This is such a good time and everything. I'd love to meet you in person, but I prefer things to be maybe a little more organically than something that's just, a set date and time, and we're going to go and we're going to talk cases and everything. I don't know. That's disc golf tourney. Tiffany says we usually have 2 or 3, maybe 3 deputies on duty, except at night. There's usually 1 or 2 on duty plus 1 on call. Okay, Tiffany. So as far as a meetup goes, it'd probably be fun, but would have to have a central location where a lot of people could show up. I don't know where that would be. And really, I'm not much of a party thrower. So if somebody's going to arrange something, it's probably going to have to be somebody else that if somebody wants to do that and wants to work with me on it. Let's talk about it. I'm just not a very good party thrower. I'm a party goer, not a party thrower. But if somebody wants to do that, you want to work something out, I'll be there. Let's get to the shirts. What shirt am I wearing tonight? I'm wearing the Andrea Bowman shirt right here. There you go. That her mother sent me. And so I'm wearing that for this show tonight. And of course, we got this though. We got that. You can find that on myshopify.com. The collage on the back, all the first year cases. There you go. Donna says, if I ever make it up to Northern Idaho, let me know. Probably I'd have when I lived in Las Vegas, I probably would have had a better chance of doing that, Donna. I've actually been through Idaho once, and that would have been in May of 2000, one time. But I plan to move back to Las Vegas one of these days, so you never know. Books. I talked about book 4. It's out, but here's book 1, book 2, book 3. Congratulations to Nadia and Jeremiah, who won books with the little contest that we had this past weekend, trying to guess some of my favorite albums. We got Patreon and PayPal. A lot of contributors recently, very, very generous. I deeply appreciate that. And the playing cards, where are those? Right here. I got them out. So who we got? There we go. Joshua Guimond. Crystal Morrison. There we go. Kent Jacobs. You can find these at makeplayingcards.com if you're interested. I'm going to be working on some more sets when I'm up at my parents', when I think that I will have a little bit more time. Let's go to this week's case, and then maybe I will take some more questions from the audience. Ellen Sloan is, let me do something real quick. Okay. Great. Okay. Ellen Sloan, this is this week's disappearance. This will be Unfound's first journey to Montana, Polson, Montana specifically. Ellen Sloan disappeared around April 16th, 2005. The episode, the title of it is going to be Disappearance and Taxes. This is probably, I'm going to say, the first case where there is at least a chance that somebody ran away from their life for a situation that they got themselves into. Now, in Ellen's case, it was unwittingly. Okay, I just want to be clear about that. She got involved in some tax problems because of an investment she made in Belize. It turned out to be, I think, a scam. And neither myself nor her daughter, Brienne, who is the interview for the episode, are tax experts. But we try to cover kind of what was going on with Ellen. She was an independent woman, had investments, and this investment she made got herself in some trouble. And she ended up having her assets frozen. This happened in early 2005, and there were charges brought against her. And I think she was in jail and had to make bail, and there was going to be a trial coming up. But she, as far as her daughter knows, and her daughter has talked to her mother's attorney at the time, everybody believes that Ellen Sloan had every intention of answering these charges. She wanted to, I think, no matter what happened, I think she was going to have to do some jail time, even though, once again, she was not the mastermind or anything else. And I do not believe, at least from what I understand, that she was trying to get away out of paying taxes, anything like that. But once again, I'm not a tax attorney. But she disappeared. And it was shortly after she had called her daughter, Brienne, asking for money because, once again, her assets were frozen. Now, the difficult part about this is that Brienne, her daughter, who once again is the guest for Friday's episode, she didn't know that her mother was going through these things. She was living in Colorado. She was married. She had just had her first child in 2005. And her mother was asking for money, but her daughter did not know that her mother had been charged with these tax evasion or something kind of charges. Didn't know. Daughter didn't know until after her mother disappeared. In fact, weeks after her mother disappeared. Her truck, Ellen Sloan's truck, was found a month later across the highway from the Missoula, Montana airport. There were things in it, things that you think that she should have taken if she was fleeing, that she didn't. Now, what's interesting about the truck being there is that it was not parked in a regular parking space. It was parked like in a fire lane or something like that. It couldn't have been parked there very long when it was actually found. It couldn't have been sitting there for the month that Ellen was missing. Somebody must have parked it there very shortly before it was found in Missoula. What is it? Over an hour away, at least, from Polson, Montana. So her truck was found, did not lead them in any particular direction. Now, the other part of it is this. This is also what makes this interesting, this case interesting, confusing, is that Ellen's boyfriend at the time, William Golson, he disappeared shortly after she did. So she disappears around April 16th, 2005. He disappears a couple weeks after that. Well, what you need to know about William Golson is that also in 2005, while she was getting these charges against her regarding taxes, this investment she made, he was getting charged with having had a sexual relationship with his daughter. So those were allegations against him. It was not Ellen's daughter. They were Ellen and William had only known each other for about a year before she disappeared, before they both disappeared. So he had charges brought against him, and he disappeared. So that obviously made this disappearance very difficult to solve, and that's why it's still unsolved to this day. Now, the important part, and this is something, if you're going to go to Charlie Project, for example, and look this case up, the information there needs to be updated. William Golson was eventually found. He was found in Tennessee. He claims to have no knowledge about Ellen's disappearance. He claims that she just up and left, and he claims that she probably did flee because of these charges brought against her. William Golson was brought back to Montana. He was thrown in jail, pled out for those charges against him. He is now a free man. He just got out of jail within the last year and a half. So this is the disappearance of Ellen Sloan. She disappeared from Polson, Polson, Montana on April 16th, 2005. The title of this episode is called Disappearance and Taxes. And I talk a little bit about fear as a theme for this particular episode. The episode is about an hour and 40 minutes long. I think my interview with Brienne is over an hour long, something like that. So unlike, for example, the Thomas Brown case, it was 3.5 hours. This one's about an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. I believe this is the first time this case has been covered on any podcast or anything, and you know that I like doing that for these cases that maybe aren't as well known. And once again, we're going to a new state, Montana. I had a former roommate in Las Vegas. She was from Montana. I lived with her from 2000, 2002. No, we were not a couple. We were very good friends. She was more like a sister to me. She was from Billings, Montana, though. And she ended up getting married and then moved to San Diego, and she has a bunch of kids now. But so I know, at least that's what I know about Montana. Never been to that state. Never even driven through it. So that's this weekend, this Friday. Ellen Sloan from Polson, Montana. So let's take another question from the audience. JJ had asked me, and I had to admit I had to look this case up. JJ asked me, do I think that the murders of Donna Hall and Mike Margaret would ever be solved? This happened, I believe, in Virginia in 1984. I'd never even known about this case until this person asked me this question. JJ did. I read through it very quickly, took a look at it for 10 minutes because if a listener is going to ask me about it, I think the least I can do is look into it. I think it is going to be solved. I know it's over 30 years later, but hey, original Night Stalker case got solved. And with the advances in DNA, of course, we already talked about that last week. Yes, I think the case is very solvable. I think it's very solvable. I don't know all the intricacies. They were 18 years old. They might have been involved in selling some drugs. Nothing like hardcore like heroin, but Demerol or something like that. It seems like it was a very vicious attack. They were stabbed to death. So, but I think it's very solvable. But what do I know? I don't know. Dorothy says, I guess regarding the Ellen Sloan case, check if any movement on her money because before she left, let them know 30 days before they seize, so that she could have taken a chunk out. It's possible, Dorothy. Possible. Certainly possible, but I don't know if she had time to seize her, get any money out before the seize, but she might have had some cash stashed away. I don't know. But as you can tell, William Golston is a suspect in her disappearance, and we get into that, in the episode. So, JJ, I think Donna Hall and Mike Margaret's murders are certainly solvable. I think these days, as long as you have DNA and things, I think anything's possible. Jill asked me, and I know Jill's in here. Jill, I know, is a steady watcher of the Unfound Live show. She asked me, what shows did I watch as a kid? The shows that come to mind, Jill, and I guess as a kid, maybe as a going maybe up until I was 12 or 13 or 14 or something like that. In Search Of. Loved that show. The original Star Trek, which at that point would have been in reruns. Loved Three's Company. Still love Three's Company. John Ritter, a physical comedic genius. And he died way before his time. Love Three's Company. I can remember watching like those Godzilla movies on Saturdays. Godzilla versus Mothra or things. Loved those as a kid. Lost in Space, which once again would have been in reruns by the time I was watching it. And then maybe when I got a little older, I loved Scooby-Doo on Saturday mornings. Loved He-Man. I watched He-Man and Skeletor. It was so good. Ultraman. That was like one of those kind of things like Godzilla. That was from Japan. Ultraman, right? The guy that would go like this and he had the light beeping on his chest. Ultraman was awesome. What else? Speed Racer. Loved the cartoon Speed Racer too. Loved it with Pops and Chim Chim and all that. Loved it. The Speed Racer movie was horrible. But those are some of the shows that I watched as a kid. So alternating between cartoons and In Search Of, and then with a little comedy in between. So I still love all of it. If I can find anything like that on YouTube or whatever, I watch it. It's great. Marie had asked me, and once again, I don't know if she's here. Marie had asked me, which serial killer do I fear the most, even if they've been caught already? I still believe the original Night Stalker, even though we now know who he is. He, I think, probably is the most fearful. Why? Because he actually went into where people feel the safest and did what he did. People, they go into their house, they lock the doors, they shut the windows, they have, maybe they own a gun or something, they feel secure there. He had no problem going into those areas, breaking in and terrorizing people where they should have been their strongest, and he was able to beat them on their own turf. I think that's why that will always make him the most feared serial killer, at least in the United States. Sherry says, hi, Ed. Hi, Sherry. Are you just tuning in now? That's all right. We still got a ways to go. I'm going to answer some questions here before we're done. And if you missed the rest of the program, you can catch it on YouTube later after the fireworks are over. Erica asked me 3 questions. I'm going to take another one. And Erica, I'm just going to have to limit it to 2 this week. Erica asked me, is a lack of an electronic footprint the new standard of whether somebody is missing or not? I think that's a fascinating topic. Question, Erica. It's very insightful. I think it is. I think you're right. I think obviously the standard has changed since the 1970s, 80s, even into the 90s. That, back then it would have just been, have you talked to that person on the telephone? Have you seen that person in person? Now with social media, Facebook, and with cell phones being able to track people everywhere, yes, it probably is the standard. It is probably the new standard. Not if somebody hasn't seen somebody, but if they're off Facebook or off social media or haven't texted anybody for a while, I think that's very insightful. However, I would add a corollary to that. Those electronic footprints only matter if that person actually uses electronic media enough to be able to establish a pattern of use. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. My parents, they both have cell phones and they both take their cell phones, but they don't use them a lot. They don't get on the internet a lot. They don't use Facebook at all. So it's probably still going to depend on, at least at this time in 2018, it depends on the person, the person's use, what they actually do. Now, but the thing is, people who are in their 60s, 50s, maybe the generation before me, 50s, 60s, 70s, they grew up, in their prime years without the internet, without for the first time. So now they're in their 70s, they're not used to that being a part of their everyday activity. They have them because it's convenient, but I would say that they can easily live without them. As those people, unfortunately, pass away, and my generation, for example, gets into the 50s, 60s, 70s, then it will be even more of a standard, Erica, because those people would have grown up teenage years, 20s, 30s, using electronic devices, and then you'll be able to determine, yes, if somebody in their 70s is missing, then yes, you'll be able to look at their electronic footprint to determine something. Right now, I just don't know if you can do that for older people. That's what I would say. Then on top of that, I would say that anybody that's homeless or somebody like that living on the streets, and we've covered a couple of those people are not going to have electronic footprints probably either. So, and that may always be the case. But I think it's an insightful question that, yeah, it may be the electronic footprint is the new standard instead of just, not seeing somebody. Donna says, I'm 50 and I'm on Facebook all the time. LOL. All right, Donna. All right. There is a world out there. I'm on Facebook all the time, but it's part of what I do. It's part of the way that, of course, interacting with all of you. And, and I've often said that, if I was doing something else, would I be on here as much? Probably not. I would still probably have a Facebook account and things, but if I was doing something else, probably not. I probably wouldn't be on there as much. I don't know. It's an alternative reality at this point. Let's see. Let's see. I have one more question. Charmin, I know you're here, so keeping in touch with the grandkids, Lisa, as well. You should be. That's very great. That's good of you, and I'm sure they're keeping in touch with you. Charmin, I know you're here, so I'm going to answer your question. First podcast. I started doing podcasting. I don't even know if it was called that back then. And I know there was a time, maybe about, 5 years ago, where somebody tried to copyright or patent podcasting. Do you remember that? You can look that up. I'm going to say that I started podcasting when I got my first Mac Mini in about 2006. And I was doing, being the time I was doing independent film, I was doing an independent film podcast. And I was talking about filmmaking. I was also talking about like movies that were coming out and Hollywood news and things like that. And I did that for a while, getting my feet wet. I was working entertainment at the time. I was an independent filmmaker. I'd done some acting and things. So it felt like the right thing to do. And it was good. And then I kind of got away from it, kind of got into other things. Frankly, the show was not that successful, just to be honest. But I kept doing it in my spare time, just posting stuff once in a while to a couple different websites that I have set up that don't exist anymore. All sorts of different topics and things that I really don't want to go into right at this second. But I've been doing this for a while. But then I married that, of course, with my interest, my longtime interest. Of course, Jill asked me about my shows as a kid. I brought up In Search Of, mysteries, disappearances, unsolved cases and things. Always been interesting to me, with my kind of mind. And so I married that with my podcasting experience, and that's how Unfound got created. So I've been doing it for a while. The setup that I have, let me see if I can show you this to you. Here's the microphone that I use. Now I'm going to tell you, I doubt there are hardly any podcasters anymore who are actually using a real mic cord. But I've had this cord and this microphone since 2006. I've been using the same setup since 2006. You can even see the top of the microphone is really kind of beat up from me dropping it and everything. I doubt, because most microphones I think that podcasters using today are just direct USB. But I'm a little old school, so mine goes into a preamp type of thing that I can mess with the levels, and then it goes into my Macs, either whatever Mac I'm using, either my Mac Mini or my MacBook Pro. So the equipment that I use for my podcast is probably older than any other podcast any of you listen to. So, but it still works. I love it, and I wouldn't change it at all. So I think we're going to call it that. We've been doing this for an hour. So what did we talk about? We talked, of course, it's July 4th. Next week, I'm going to be coming to you from Pennsylvania, and that will be that case for until about the middle of August. We talked about the Thomas Brown case, about how it got some coverage in Amarillo on Monday night. Then Tuesday morning, the private investigator did an interview on KXDJ with Chris Samples there. We talked about some of the things that were mentioned, and if you haven't seen them, I would go and find them in the discussion group, and hopefully you're a member in the discussion group. And then we talked about what next week's case, July 13th, is probably going to be. It's going to be a look-back episode and giving you updates on many, many cases that Unfound has covered. Just some things that have changed, some updates. And like I said, I think I counted so far, there will be 37 different cases that I'm going to be able to talk about, I think. Right around there. Took some questions about pets, about a meetup, about electronic footprint, about me, how long I've been podcasting, what I've been talking about, my prior jobs, and me being a jack of all trades. The murder of Donna Hall and Mike Margaret, what shows I liked as a kid, and then what serial killer do I think is the scariest? And I told you it was the original Night Stalker. Talked about the shirts, talked about books, talked about Patreon and PayPal, talked about the playing cards, and we talked most importantly about this week's case, the disappearance of Ellen Sloan, Polson, Montana, April 16, 2005. That will be the case this Friday. The interview is with her daughter, Brianne Edwards, and the episode is called Disappearance and Taxes. So there you go. I hope you all have a beautiful evening, cooking out or watching fireworks, just hanging out with family, watermelon, apple pie, all those things people do. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing after I leave this show. I'll have to figure that out. But as always, thank you for tuning in early today. But next week we'll be going back to the regular time of 9 p.m. Eastern. So with that, I'm going to leave you all. Please be safe around those fireworks. They can be dangerous. Please be careful with that. I've never been a fireworks guy, so I've never had to worry about that. Never played with them or anything, but please be careful. With that, my favorite time of the week. Thank you all for tuning in. Cannot thank you enough. You've been watching the Unfound Live show with its host, myself, Ed Densel. Good night.